The Canada Revenue Agency and the Canada Revenue Agency Corporation, the real CRA and the fake CRA Part 4, Amendment for More Audit Power, which means to legalize fraud. This is the amendment tabled by the Minister of National Revenue, François Philippe Champagne, who also holds the position of Minister of Finance on April 16, 2024, and to be discussed in 2025. About any leadership positions, holding two positions at the same time and go to public office based on an ad hoc basis seems impossible. It is a delusion. Ronald Reagan said it is nihilism. What can you do in the department, especially a complex department such as national revenue and finance? These two are the nation's logistics. You go there on an ad hoc basis. You do very little but boasting. It means that this amendment is spoon-fed, and he may never read or digest it before. He just read it, but never read it and analyzed it himself. The CRA audit mentioned in this amendment is actually a fraud. To have access to your cash in the bank. Let me emphasize it again and again. This so-called audit is nothing but a fraud. They ask you for your book record and invoices, but all they see and use is your bank account. How much cash you have in your bank account. This is their main target. Then they check your materials in the house, the number of TVs in the house, the number of cars you have, the type of your flooring, your house, furniture, things in your living room, your garage, and all materials you have in your house. This is what they call audit. They audit your materials and your bank book and investment in the bank, such as GIC. They never use this investment because you have to go through the procedural process in order to get the GIC out of your bank. So they only use the cash. Investment they don't touch. They think that you live on taxpayers' money as the politicians do. I find it funny when I work at a chartered accountant office, I heard the auditor, a woman who came to audit by herself, ask her victim, who is a farmer, explained this invoice. I was surprised. The man is a farmer. He purchased several sacks of seeds to plant in his farm. What should he explain? Another person purchased several gallons of paints from a hardware store and he does paintings. The auditor asked, explain this invoice. What should he explain? The man is a painter and he purchased paints to paint a house. What to explain? These auditors think you make a living from your tax dollars and they want you to explain, just as the politicians who use your tax dollars for their personal expenses. Take a look at the corrupt officials who used the student's identity and took student loan using forgery and fraudulent documents, or even took a departmental loan under the student loan program and had been forcing the students to pay the loan back to them using the collection agency, Total Credit Recovery, and OSAP, but the real name or the real entity of OSAP is Ontario Credit Collection Services. They even use the CRA people to steal the students' tax refunds and federal and provincial benefits and lie to the students in their notice of assessment about the collection. What Total Credit Recovery and Ontario Credit Collection Services do is illegal. It is a crime. They do not have legal authority to collect student loan. Making a collection using forgery and fraudulent documents is a crime. It is a fraud. It is robbery. It is in the Criminal Code Act. How many lawyers or police officers know this? In fact, the student loan they collect are the fraudulent loan taken by the bank officials and the corrupt officials at the provincial and federal departments that deal with student loan program. Those at the federal government, which is the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada, also took departmental loan and charged it on the innocent students. The government actually told these corrupt officials to pay back the loan, which they did, but these corrupt officials then turn around and force the students to pay the money directly to them. Therefore, the CRA corporations, the company that sends the collection letter, always tell the students to send the money directly to the individuals at their respective PO box address. There is a different person each month, the main persons. And of course, there are others along the line. Therefore, the theft continues as the students have become their perpetual victims. These corrupt officials use the CRA name to force the innocent students to be responsible for their debt taken in a criminal way. And no leaders in the federal government or provincial government is willing to take charge on this matter. They let the students suffer for years. These collection agencies have been pestering and harassing the students with their daily telephone call, and interestingly, when they make the call, they use the name Ontario Ministry of Finance, a department that doesn't have anything to do with student loan program. Even a judge doesn't know this because judges are private lawyers or police officers, detectives who then appointed by the politicians because they raise money for the politicians. You call this government of Canada? You call all these politicians great leaders? Great leaders take charge. These politicians never take charge. They send you to the customer service. You call people at the CRA or those working in the government are righteous people? Ever since the Harper took over the leadership positions or as the prime minister, all the security clearance have been eliminated and replaced with confidentiality agreements. So that's why many people are no longer tested. Their loyalty and honesty have never been tested. Their background have never been tested, never been checked. Once you turn the government into a corporation, people use the opportunity to milk on your tax dollars illegally, but then turn around and charge you for their illegal deed. But these so-called great politicians keep sending you to the customer service rather than taking charge. They don't know how to take charge. Don't you know that using the customer service is a coward practice? Customer service system is only good for the retail industry about selling refunds and exchanges, but a horrible system and a nightmare for the citizens if the government uses the customer service. Because the government is a scientific field of administration and management. Since the students never say anything about this reality because they don't know, and no government officials, lawyers, or police officers is willing to investigate this case, these corrupt officials collaborated with the CRA and keep stealing the students' tax refunds and all benefits. And I'm one of these innocent students. All my tax refunds and benefits from tax years 2012 disappeared into the hands of these corrupt officials. There is a pipeline of corruption that also includes the leaders. This explains why they keep sending you to the customer service, because they don't want you to know that they also receive a portion of the money taken from your tax refunds and benefits. The love of money is the root of all evils. They love money so much that they want to expand their victims, using the audit power, and their fake court as a way of robbing you or defrauding you, believing that you're making a living just as the politicians do from your tax dollars. Behind the scene, they work with the bank managers to clean up your bank account and have the bank managers to lie to you saying the CRA froze your account. How dummy can a person be believing such a thing? Only those who work in the public office, all public office, work on behalf of the government to deliver goods and services, and even lobbyists. So people who works and deliver goods and services on behalf of the government, the lobbyists and the elites are making a living from you, your tax dollars. They make a living from your tax dollars. Your tax dollars are used to survive the WEF. You own this organization, but this organization wants to depopulate you, turn you into transhuman, and brand you as Luciferians, and have you to own nothing but be happy. Trudeau has decided that by the end by the end quarter of 2021, all of you Canadians would surrender all your assets to the Committee of 300s. He would erase all your debts if you surrender all your properties to and or assets to him, to the Committee of 300. He worked for this forum while it should be the other way around. You are supposed to control the WEF. This is the impact of money. Those who receive free money from you turn against you and want you to have what you have. This is the reality. When you give people free money, they turn against you. It is better to give people job, even though with a modest salary, but they will not turn against you. But if you just give it as a freebie, they turn against you. The benefits that the government give to you is part of redistributing national income. Since the government reform and becomes corporate Canada, such redistribution has been taken back by the CRA and Service Canada in many different schemes. The audit is just part of robbing you. They want to give you financial difficulty. Remember that for the CRA Corporation, everything is money, not about doing things to serve you. It was created for taking what you have. This is the type of audit and non-compliance, and even the final amount they charge you from the beginning of their audit venture is to enrich themselves and pay the ISIS continue fighting. They want ISIS to continue fighting because the war is a business. The CRA Corporation is the main contributor to the ISIS, a platinum contributor, while the CIBC is the main payer. Not only they use your tax dollars to fund the war, but also by robbing you. Hitler took the money from the wealthies to fund the war, of course, from the US as well. But the CRA Corporation take the money from the elderly, the poor, and the small business operators to fund the war, while the elites are basking in wealth of your tax dollars. So in the First Amendment, they want to issue a new non-compliance at any time. They consider that a request has gone unheeded with a possible penalty of $25,000 up to $25,000. In this amendment, they say if you're not compliant, they will send you a notice of compliance, or they say you are non-compliant, you will be automatically charged between $24,000 and up to $25,000. Generally, they put the notice of non-compliance on your T1 notice of assessment. This is how they lie to you. They say that they will send you a notice of compliance from the court. They want to make you think that their audit is very complex, but it is nothing. It is only your cash transaction or bank transactions or deposits, mainly the deposits. Nothing about the amount you pay, but only the amount of deposits. Read the book Canada's White Collar Crimes, Political, Financial, and Corporate Crimes. You will have a better understanding how the CRA has for years manipulated, deceived, and robbed you with the so-called audit. About this so-called notice of compliance, mind you, the CRA Corporation is a customer service, meaning they are everything. They created their own imaginary Department of Justice Canada, and the minister, political staff, collection agent, the appeal officers are all the same person, or sometimes different person. They also make their own tax court, and the person in charge is the customer service agent, the client representative, the court clerk, the judge, and all. Some of the names do not exist, and the address of the court is always a P.O. box. Now, where do you get that? But they pay the federal court $75 to obtain a court envelope, and they send that envelope with their fraudulent documents to you, make you believe that it is a real court. It's only an envelope. Right, again, this Canada's white collar crimes, political, financial, and corporate crimes, you will see. If you read this book, you will see all these examples of their communications to their victims and all their schemes. How do they find their victims? The auditors or the customer service agent ask the names of other business operators that work for you or with those you work for or those you work for, but they do not have the legal right to ask you any person who does business with you or for you. It is not their right to do so. Don't you have the records? Find them yourselves. You should say that. Many people do give the names of their clients, contractors or subcontractors, because they believe that this is really an audit. This is not an audit. This is how they find their victims from their victims. Why they have asked you, your clients, your subcontractors or customers? Because they are not the government. Although they carry the names of Canada Revenue Agency, they do not have any record of you. Therefore, they use you as their tool to find their next victims. If they are the real Canada Revenue Agency, they have the record about you. They don't have to use you as a tool to find their victims. It is because they are the fake Canada Revenue Agency or the Canada Revenue Agency Corporation. And they don't have any record of the Canada Revenue Agency either. They are not allowed to access the records at the Canada Revenue Agency either. At the conclusions of their audit, they charge you almost the same total amount that you have in your bank account, the cash, plus 13% HST. All their calculations are your bank deposit transactions, nothing else. They steal all your records so that you become confused because you have no records to back up your argument. These people are very radical and they don't want to listen to you if you said that there is no auditing. It is all about bank book deposit transactions plus HST 13%. This is not an audit. Then they call you and want to talk to your accountant, the person who does your T1, and claim that you owe 6 times or 8 times the amount of your cash in your bank account. They came to your door claiming they are auditing you for the HST, but after the audit, they claim that you do not pay taxes. Why they ask for the name of your accountant? It is a name they will use for their next victims, especially when the accountant is a chartered accountant. They are looking for his credential. If you do not want to pay this much amount and don't want them to talk to your accountant for this matter, they use their notice of assessment to communicate with you and claim that your account is non-compliant, but there is nothing or any other explanation why, what they meant by non-compliance. Yes, there is no other explanation, just non-compliance. Then they give you the two centralized telephone numbers of the customer service, one that can talk to you about your T1 or notice of assessment, and the other one is the one that deals with the HST or GST. In other words, they call a non-compliance means you disagree with their calculation that you owe taxes in the amount of your cash in the bank account times 6 or 8 times, which is meant for 8 or 6 different people. While you disagree with this, the CRA corporation ignores you and they just don't want to communicate with you. They all disappear. No trace. All the telephone numbers are all gone. You cannot communicate with them anymore. Now, you call this a transparent government, you call this a government, you call this the Canada Revenue Agency. Then you started receiving the so-called notice of assessment from several different people, and each one contains a remittance voucher that requires you to pay the money in a lump sum payment to the bank or with the cash to their PO box address. Generally, this voucher tells you that your HST account or social insurance number account is a holding account. From this holding account, the voucher also tells that the money would be transferred to an offshore account. Also in this voucher, there is a code that tells you who receives the money. In my husband's HST account case, for example, there are 34 offshore accounts attached to this HST account. They want him to send the money to uh, these different accounts using the remittance voucher, and there are about 6 codes that tells who received the money based on this remittance voucher. Who could tell me that this is an audit? These people disappeared. Or all the 6 people disappeared since I refused to pay for the so-called audit. It is not an audit, but a fraud. This radical audit aims at the small business operators, people who are weak and cannot defend themselves. Even the lawyers and police are not willing to help them when it is about the CRA audit. I should say, and access to your bank deposit transactions was started from the provinces that have agreed to the combine of the provincial sales tax, PST, and the federal goods and services tax, GST, and becomes the harmonized sales tax, or HST. In other words, you have given away your income from the sales to the federal government. I mean, the provincial government gave away the provincial income to the federal income, and it will use it for its purpose. The federal government uses it for its purpose, not for the provincial citizens. Here is the interesting thing. After Harper combined the PST and GST and turned it into HST, he told the provincial government to go find more income from foreign countries or foreign government. Why did they give away the provincial income to be managed by the CRA in the first place? Of course, Harper said, "Thank you very much for giving me your money because you are dummies." At the same time, the CRA was also handed the authority to manage the provincial benefits. Since then, people never received their provincial benefits anymore. That is why they want you to sign up for direct deposit. This audit amendment is intended to expand the target victims. By the way, you know why they are able to fraud you through this audit? It is your fault. You want the government to operate as a business and you reject knowledge. Harper is a salesperson. He's not a public leader. He sold everything the country has like a lightning speed. He even sold the wheat board, Canada Petro, and was about to sell Parks Canada to China or Chinese when he was ousted. Any provincial leaders who agreed to combine the provincial sales tax with the federal goods and services tax I call dummy. I never like call people dummy, but this is dummy. In fact, politicians who never read but only make decisions based on reading one or two paragraph briefing notes or based solely on arguments and voting are dummies. Just give them white envelope or bribe them and propose your intention. They will quickly agree with your idea, including robbery and fraud. Just like Chrysler Freeland was about to rob the government or fraud the government $2 billion. Mr. Philip Champagne occupies the leadership positions of two complex departments, National Revenue and Finance. With him goes to the office on an ad hoc basis. It means most of his tasks are done by others and he just signs on the dotted line. Just analyze this amendment. If you are trained in analyzing public policy, you can see directly that this minister is paid to propose this amendment. This explains my husband's case, mine and my son's. For over a decade, this corporation has robbed us, three of us, using forgery and fraudulent documents and stealing all our tax funds and benefits without any explanation. They disregard all my communication demanding explanations. All the money disappeared and no communication until today, which is the end of the fourth quarter of 2025. In my husband's case, I demanded explanation because there has never been an audit, but only a record of bank deposits plus the HST. And with a little adjustment, the amount that my husband has to pay was the same amount of the total cash available at that time of the audit plus the HST amount. More interesting is that the bank account is a joint account, meaning it has two people money in it, but the money they have the bank managers to remove are two single accounts. The managers will never remove your cash if you have a joint account. In other words, they work with the bank managers to steal your money and block you from having access to your account. Do you know that in every case, the money will never leave your account without the manager's authorizations? The same goes with money laundering. Now, the banks do not want you to send cash with the argument that it is money laundering. It means that the bank managers are covering their money laundering activities and told the tellers to refuse any cash transactions because it is money laundering. Money laundering is about sending money overseas, but the tellers don't know it. They just know the terms. However, no money leaves the country without the manager's authorizations. Therefore, the managers is the key actor in money laundering activities. Remittance is about money laundering as well. Look at the foreign workers who came to Canada under the ILO scheme or temporary foreign worker schemes. They use remittance to transfer money overseas. This is just the same. This ILO and temporary foreign workers are just the same as slavery. They are a type of modern slavery that has been legalized ever since the government became a corporation. But they send money overseas using the remittance. The CRA corporation does money laundering. They send you their notice of assessment with remittance voucher. Now they want to legalize money laundering. The next one is seek a compliance order from the court and where successful apply a penalty of 10% of the aggregate amount of tax payable. This is what they have been doing all along since they started auditing small business operators after their creation in 2007. Now they want to put it in the Excise Tax Act and Underused Housing Tax Act to allow them to rob more victims, the higher or level one. They want a higher level victims. They know that the lawyers of the small business operators cannot defend their clients during their meeting and in a bitter argument. These so-called auditors or their fellows were trained to argue with you bitterly to defend their illegal audit. As I said, there has never been any audit. Just read Canada's white-collar crimes, political and financial and corporate crimes. It has never been any audit, but it is all about your cash. The CRA Corporation makes its own court, a fake court. Don't be fooled by this. They have been using the name Canada Revenue Agency since the creation. They use the name of the chartered accountant you gave to deceive the other victims. They use a chartered accountant credential to deceive you, but none of them were trained or they were not accountants. They're not accountants, but they were trained to deceive you, to rob you. The words or the Excise Tax Act mentioned in the requirement to pay sent to the victims and the other 6 or 8 people who have business relations with the victims is just a political phraseology intended to threat you, manipulate you, and force you to pay. The words of the act meant nothing. It has nothing to do with an audit, a fraudulent audit in this case. It is just to scare you, just like Ari Farah, whose real name is Michael Scolfer, who often say to the lawyers or the accountant that, or the victims, that he was victimizing, or the CRA Act. Me mention the CRA Act. The CRA Act is about the organizational structure of the CRA, not about the CRA auditing process. Millions of people have been victimized and they and the lawyers were not capable of helping them because they believe in this lie. This is why the CRA Corporation has been flourished without any restriction. Their first victims after the creation were the elderly people. All their federal benefits were taken, disappeared, and into their hands, created for political purpose. This corporation was created for political purpose to take over public service. Dealing with the government agencies or departments is different from dealing with corporations. No one pays attention to the differences between the government entities and private corporations. They paint the government with the same brush they paint the private corporations. A requirement to pay that these unethical auditors or the CRA corporation sends to the victims is illegal. It is a fraud. A requirement to pay can only be issued between 60 to 90 days after the judge issued his or her decision in a real court process. In other words, you have to go through a real judicial process and the judge has decided that you owe taxes. Then the person who issues the requirement to pay is the minister of the Department of National Revenue and signed by the minister himself, not the customer service agent or auditor. Why these unethical or shameless auditors steal all your record? To prevent you from taking the chance before the real court. You don't have any proof. They have stolen them all. You have no more evidence to use for a court appeal. You go to the real court, but the CRA Corporation has its own court, a fake court. Its clerk, lawyer, the appeal officer, and judge are all the same person, all in one, the customer service agent. Then there is a forced interviews and written responses to be provided under oath with no procedural safeguard. Watch the word no procedural safeguards. I ask a forced interviews. The forced interview is about asking you, explain this in voice. This is the same question they ask the politicians who use your tax dollars to buy their shoes, purse, clothes, or other personal items. Those working in the government or for the government, including these auditors, are paid by your tax dollars. Even their cellular telephones are paid by your tax dollars. You pay your telephone and monthly billing on your own effort, but these auditors think that you use tax dollars to purchase the phone and pay its monthly expenses. They think you make a living from the tax dollars. The auditors will pick up 4 or 5 invoices from your record. Then he or she will show you one of the invoices of your purchase that you use for your work. For example, you are in construction business and you purchase a gallon of paint from a hardware store. The auditors ask you, explain this invoice. But what to explain? The hardware store has almost everything, including paints, to paint the houses you are building. It means that the auditors does not know about the store. He or she thinks that a hardware store is only for household merchandises. In another case, the person makes an income from renting his second house or subletting his basement. The auditor will pick out a receipt he received from charity. Then he will ask, explain this invoice. In the early 1980s, prior to privatization or the government reform, people used some extra income for charity. They help other people. But as the political parties began asking for money directly from organizations, corporations, and even individuals of any kind, or asking money from you and lobbying the government, the auditors think that you get the job by lobbying and begging for money from other companies, and they want to know who is your lobbyist and the other companies you deal with. Even wealthy individuals and wealthy banks ask you for money. They are begging you for money every day or every month. They all become wealthy, live luxuriously on your donations. If your donation for a certain organization is more than $100, the auditors will then ask you a question. Explain this invoice. This is, as I said, the same question they ask the politicians. They have nothing against you but your cash deposit transactions. These auditors are not accountants or are not trained in auditing either. They were trained to target your cash and focus on the deposit transactions, nothing else. All your records will be destroyed. They destroy them all. Apply all the new rules to other tax statutes administered or administrated by the CRA, which is the Excise Tax Act 201, and Underused Housing Tax Act, etc. This means that they are targeting those in the construction industry and real estate. These two industries are experiencing bonanza development, and the CRA is sure that they will make more money from you once you put this audit into an act. Any politicians who vote yes to this amendment means that they are dummies. I call them dummies. I'm wondering if they will go after Minto, but for sure they will go after the contractors, the subcontractors, and the sub-subcontractors, and the sub-sub-subcontractors of Minto. There are many contractors in the construction industry. They are layers. It is all about the money. They love the money. They work for the money, not for serving you. They work to satisfy their greed. Do you remember the phrase or the question, do you eat to live or live to eat? It is the case of the CRA Corporation. It is a parasite. They make a living from you but turn around and victimize you. They survive for the money, not survive for serving you. For them, you are nothing but a future target. Once they turn you into a victim, you become their perpetual victim. I have allowed my husband to be victimized that I can help you to realize and defend yourself from this fraudulent practice. It is also the opportunity for me to learn how myself and our son have been victimized as well. I learned about their schemes and strategies to victimize both my son and I myself when or after letting my husband be audited. Without him going through, I didn't know why all our tax refunds and benefits all disappeared. But due to this incident that I find out all, and I got all the proof. And this has become an endless fraud because the case is always handled by the customer service agent whose job is to manipulate, deceive, lie, and deny. My husband has become the CRA Corporation perpetual victim, although after the real CRA helped out and he received some money back, they still steal his tax refunds and family benefits. All their previous victims are their perpetual victims. Having the CRA to do your tax refunds is just a political manipulation for them to take your tax refunds and all benefits, both the federal and provincial benefits, or they will take a portion from each. All they do, just as you see in their audit, is play around with the numbers. Move one number here to there or some number from here to there, increase here and decrease there. You have to read the numbers and analyze them. The CRA and even their customer service agents have been warned to ignore me because I'm capable of reading their numbers and analyze them. This is a pipeline of collusion, corruption, and fraudulent practices. The only way to get a clean CRA is that you have to default the CRA corporation and remove all the corrupt people along this pipeline. So you have to get the government to audit this agency. This agency needs to be audited. Why they want to expand their fraudulent practice to cover their wide audience? Because in 2007, the police units and the law society have not been properly trained to counter white-collar crimes that come out from the government. This crime is spreading because the government is becoming a corporation. They want to legalize their crime, even forcing people to be responsible for their crime using the name the CRA or Canada Revenue Agency. How low can a person be? This audit is indeed a robbery, a fraud. This is one of the darkest sides of the corporate government: corruption, collusion, theft, graft, bribery, and fraud. Pop and soda clubs. When you work in the public office, the government, whether you are public servants or politicians or even political appointees, everyone who works in the public office, without exception, is not allowed to become members of any other organizations. You have to stay neutral. Your vision, mission, and objectives are to maximize public interest, and you have to serve the public. When you join the pop and soda clubs, you become a person with two masters. You will end up with love one and hate the other. Since the politicians are never trained in the government, but only some orientations about their constituency, and they go to the public office on an ad hoc basis or as a part-timer, or when they're needed, they do not have a strong knowledge about the government, and let alone the tasks they should do. They don't have job descriptions. They do not know about the missions and objectives of the public institution. They do not understand about the constitutions or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and applying the meanings of the contents of the constitutions and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in their daily tasks while they don't have job descriptions. They join the pop and soda clubs. One of the pop and soda clubs, the politicians that become members are the Bilderberg Group, or they call it the Bilderberg, an organization led by the European royalty. Different from the constitutions or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the pop and soda clubs have simple objectives. It is easy to follow. It is not difficult and complex as those of the government either. One of the objectives of the Bilderberg is to cause financial difficulty. Ever since the politicians become the members of this group, your tax office has been used as a tool to cause you financial difficulty. The officials use their positions and authority to create schemes to cause you financial difficulty, including this fraudulent audit. If you don't stop it, if you don't stop the CRA from its fraudulent audit and let the elected officials to legalize this audit and allow them to do the tax refunds for you, you're doomed. Start praying. You have to start audit this agency. Another organization is the World Economic Forum, the WEF. By definition, Canada should have owned this forum. All the expenses of this forum are paid by your tax dollars. However, this forum seems to own your government and wants your government to take all that you have and let you have nothing but be happy. Justin Trudeau was convinced that by the end quarter of 2021, he would get all Canadians vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine and surrender all their assets to the Committee of 300, part of the WEF. He refused to meet with the leaders of the Freedom Convoy, but met with the leaders of the Black Lives Matters or those of the Antifa. These people are not Canadians, they are foreigners. You are the citizens who elected him and put him in power. Does it make sense to you? He met with the leaders of these groups who are foreigners, but betray you. He even called those who protested the COVID-19 vaccine mandate extremists, fringe minorities, misogynists. Does it make sense to you? Because of them, he was a prime minister. Their policies indicate that they are loyal to their pop and soda clubs than to you, people who elected them and put them at the helm of political power. It is a betrayal. It is a treason. There is also the Freemason, the Bohemian Grove. Most members of the Bohemian Grove are the head of the state or members of the state executives like ministers or secretaries, and Harper is one of them. As they leave the country and engage in the agendas of the world bodies, they also engage in the cabal practices. Some police officers were even recruited to be members of the Satanic Club. This makes the cases of homicides that involve children or human sacrifice will never be solved. These officers just close their eyes as what happened in Nova Scotia. In the United States, many public leaders, such as the congressmen, politicians, judges, lawyers, even police officers, are also involved in the cabal practices. This makes the case of child trafficking and human sacrifice difficult to be solved. Worse still, politicians are involved in the case of child trafficking. For example, Hillary Clinton. She is behind the business while Paul Martin's ship, the Sheila Ann, which used to be owned by the public, has been the transporter. The ship carries the evergreen containers that carry children to the United States. You need a person with a steel gut, properly trained, have compassion with professionalism, and stand up for justice to put these people in jail. You need a person who is committed to public cause, not someone who is member of the pop and soda clubs and is easily strayed by the objectives of the clubs. They love the clubs and hate the public, although the public elected them. Therefore, every person who works in the public office, including the politicians, must be trained before they start working in the public office. Ever since the government reform, politicians are like business people. They use politics to do business. You need to use politics to solve crimes, to solve all kinds of crimes, maybe white collar crimes or red collar crimes. You use politics, which is the use of your tact and wisdom to solve public problems. Rather, they use politics to manipulate, deceive, and sell your resources and public policy and simply to enrich themselves at your expense. I remembered Harper took some Chinese people and toured around the Parks Canada's log stations. He was selling Parks Canada to the Chinese. Harper sold all government-owned entities like a lightning speed to foreigners. When you are a public leader, you have ample of opportunities to do good to the citizens. Why sacrificing this opportunity for the sake of the Pop and Soda Club to meet their agenda and sacrificing the lives of your own citizens who believe in you and entrust you with the political power to support them? One of Harper's agendas or key initiative when he was in power was Destination 2020. This is the same as America's 2020 or Australia's 2020. It means that by January 2020, the deep state took over the U.S. public service, or the CRA Corporation and Service Canada took over the public service. In the structure, it shows that public servants are totally remote from you. Everything is done by the customer service and the things associated with you, especially about the logistics and money, are at the CRA, never mention the corporation and Service Canada. In January 2020, the CRA Corporation and the CRA merged, but they still do things separately, and the CRA Corporation is still the customer service and doesn't have access to the record of the CRA. They serve you everything, no longer the CRA. Even if you communicate with the real CRA, they keep sending you to the CRA Corporation. When things are done by the customer service, it means there's no leadership. It is a savage practice, a coward practice. Being a leader means you take charge. No public leader has ever taken any charge. They keep sending you to the public office since the government, to the customer service since the government reform. How can you take charge when you are hardly at the office? You only go to the public office once or twice in a week. You do not know anything, let alone if you occupy a position of 2 or 3 different departments. When you keep sending people to the customer service, it gives the customer service more power. Therefore, you find that the CRA customer service are very arrogant and very horrible. They exert their power over you and always ready to crush you. They symbolize an evil leader. In 2023, the CRA Corporation President, CEO, and Commissioner William Baker died, and he was replaced by Bob Hamilton, the Commissioner of the CRA. Well, of course, his salary multiplies, but do you think he will survive as the leader of both the state CRA and the fake CRA? This deep state has now infiltrated the public office because the government does not have employees with mental and technical capacity. They cannot defend the public because they don't have the technical capacity and are incapable to solve public problems. In addition, they have been restricted from serving you. Because of this infiltration, they want to legalize their fraudulent audit and have this new Minister Francois Philippe Champagne, to amend their power into the Excise Tax Act and Underused Housing Tax Act. They know that holding the Department of National Revenue and Department of Finance uh, and goes to the office on an ad hoc basis, they know that he knows nothing. And it is easy to control him. This makes the CRA become rotten more and more, and like a boiled egg, it will eventually smell. Will the real CRA destroy it? It depends on you. You need to audit the CRA and delete this CRA corporation. Since the creation of the CRA Corporation, not everyone received notice of assessment from the CRA Corporation, but only those it has victimized. Since no one said anything, in 2016, everyone receives notice of assessment from the CRA Corporation, not the CRA. Because of this merger, it gives the CRA Corporation the desire to legalize their fraudulent audit practices and even to withdraw all your benefits and refunds by doing your income tax returns. They want to give you more financial difficulty. Since the provincial government gave the power to the CRA to manage the provincial benefits, millions of Canadians never receive the provincial benefits anymore. No one says anything about it. Politicians do not even help you with this because they send you to the customer service. Using the customer service means to avoid responsibility and accountability. It is a system to ease financial crime and spread other white-collar crimes. At the same time, you are being removed from your right as a sovereign citizen of Canada and eventually become an organization's trash can. The provincial government gives you benefits, but the CRA corporations take them to enrich themselves and those along the corruption pipeline. When they send you a letter to demand that you owe the Ontario Trillium benefits, for example, they send you a remittance voucher as well. So who's doing the money laundering? These people who claims they are the CRA. Don't let this amendment pass and don't let the CRA to do automatic filing or online filing. Do it yourself. You will eventually lose as they use the opportunity to take all your entitlement. You will be doomed financially and suffer or will surrender all your assets to the WEF. Isn't this what Justin Trudeau wants to do? After creating the CRA Corporation in 2007, Harper also created Service Canada. If the CRA Corporation was the direct customer service of the CRA, Service Canada received outsourcing tasks from the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada. They handle the issuance of social insurance number, compensation, pensions, employment insurance, social assistance, disability insurance, and also the guaranteed income supplement. Why there is a guaranteed income supplement? It is a way to make the politician useful. Millions of people have been living below the poverty line when the government started privatization. They also never received the benefits as part of the redistribution of the national and provincial incomes. They have been creamed off. These benefits have been creamed off by the corrupt people who process the payment. The fiscal budget is about the redistribution of federal and provincial income. But the government is the steward of public resources. There are hundreds of ways the government makes money, but most of these resources have been given away to private cronies to enrich them, and this includes the politicians who own businesses. When the politicians are not trained, all they think is tax, and they tax you to death. When a new politician was given a position and authority and is in charge of a certain portfolio, such as finance, once he sees that the government owns many real estates, he quickly suggests the government to sell it to make money. He does not know or how to make money with the resources the government has, but he quickly suggests to sell them out. For example, Hilton Hotel, Royal York Hotel, Elgin Hotel, ships, and many other grand assets were used to be owned by the public. But they all have been sold to the private, and some of the private owners are former politicians. The Canada shipping line, for example, was used to be owned by the public, but in the process of privatization, it was granted to Paul Martin, the former Minister of Finance and Prime Minister. He got the wealth from you, every single one of you, without paying anything. The same goes with the CRA auditors. They want more money from you while the cronies and those along the corruption pipeline are laughing at you. No public leaders or public servants are allowed to have a business on the side because they will use their position, authority, and political connection to promote and enhance their business at your expense. In fact, they use the public resources to enrich their business. Take a look at what the politicians do once the public office is transformed into a corporation. They purchase corporate shares on behalf of them or their spouse. Yeah, their spouse are also given shares, but using your tax dollars. They paid with your tax dollars, but they are the owners of the shares. They, but you, every year, they said that you have to, you're told you have to tighten your belt. And now the CRA Corporation is chasing after everyone by demanding that they want to do your tax refund. I mean, tax returns. If they do your tax, they will steal more from you. Your refunds, your benefits, and all. If they have lied in their audit, they will lie in doing your returns. The purpose is to take back all your entitlement. They want to become wealthy using your identity. Ironically, they are sent to offshore accounts, so using your identity. So they want to become wealthy using your identity, and now after taking it, they also send the money to offshore accounts using your identity. Similar to the CRA Corporation, Service Canada was also created to take over the public service, which was materialized in 2020. Service Canada not only declared itself as an agency, but also began spreading its activities to the processing of passport. They started taking over the task of those at the citizenship and immigration, and also open up their office in foreign countries where they would issue passport and visa. Interesting what happened with the embassy. Both the CRA Corporation and Service Canada people do money laundering using your identity with the help of the bank managers. This is one of the reasons why cases of money laundering in Canada seems to be overlooked or unsolved because of the people involved. When it comes to the CRA, it is a pipeline that no one dares to touch. So is the Service Canada. They also use your account, either HST number or social insurance number. However, mark it. No money will leave your account or no money will leave the country without the manager's authorization. So the manager is the key person in money laundering activities. In 2015, after Trudeau rebranded the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada to become the Department of Families, Children and Social Development Canada, the corrupt officials, those who are involved in fraudulent student loan, theft of social assistance, disability insurance, guaranteed income supplement, employment insurance, were then moved to Service Canada as contractors. They process their payments to you. What a coincidence. These people know that politicians are clueless about the government, its administration and management systems, and let alone the tasks they should do. They don't know about the organizations, the department, or the agency they lead. They go to the office on an ad hoc basis or like a part-timer just when they're needed, and they don't really know what is going on under the table. You know, one of the requirements that shows that you are a good leader is that you know everything under the table. The politicians do not know what is under the table. They never read any papers or communications that come to them. The political staff even keep any communications from you away from these leaders, and these elected leaders are not leaders. They never take charge but always follow the briefing or the protocol. Then they have never been trained in the government and read only one or two paragraph briefing notes prepared by their political staff and signed on the dotted line. Sometimes they do not even know what they sign, or they forget things that they said. So they just rationalize or justify justify the issue after signing a wrong decisions or after speaking wrong things. They just rationalize and justify. Therefore, these corrupt individuals created Employment and Social Development Canada, a phantom entity, which is later in 2020 they claim this is a department. But notice, neither Justin Trudeau nor Carney has a department called Employment and Social Development Canada. It is a phantom department. So when, after Justin Trudeau rebranded this department, this Employment and Social Development Canada wrote a welcome letter to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development Canada, John Duclos, the first minister with this portfolio. They put their welcome letter online, and they do the same with the current Minister of Jobs and Employment, Patty Haju. They also wrote a welcome letter. But Carney doesn't have a department called Employment and Social Development Canada. The interesting thing is that John Duclos never worked at the department. He worked at the Parliament Hill while the department is in Gatineau. In other words, you have the head at the Parliament Hill and the body is in Gatineau. What kind of organizational management is this? The head is and the body are in different places. So the head and the body are in different places. It is very dysfunctional, don't you think? When I wrote to this minister about the fraudulent student loan, because I'm one of the 650,000 student victims whose identities were used by the bank officials and the corrupt government officials at the provincial and federal governments in the student loan programs, and took student loan fraudulently using forgery and fraudulent documents submitted by the bank officials, or took internal loan under the scheme of student loan and then forced the students to be responsible for their loans. It is a crime, a white-collar crime. Where were the police when you need them? Where were the lawyers when you seek their help? The police, which has been turned into customer service, and the lawyers are not familiar with this kind of crime. So rather than taking charge, I was sent to face directly with these fraudsters, these corrupt government officials. And The most interesting and ironic in this case is that these fraudsters are Service Canada's integrity investigators, or they claim they are integrity investigators. Every single one of them. There goes your problem-solving process. This proves to me that these leaders do not know how to take charge. Taking charge is one of the requirements for a good leader. They never do. They never take charge. They send you to the customer service instead, over and over and over. If the CRA Corporation was centralized, Service Canada was established in a cluster of different customer service, and the ones in charge are contractors. They hide themselves and always use the PO box address. Instead of firing or punishing all the corrupt officials, they become contractors and carry with them the records of their victims that government claimed missing hard drive. It is funny to camouflage the reality of their conduct. These corrupt contractors create a section they call integrity section, but they are the integrity investigators. Does it make sense? Have you noticed people's behavior, especially those known as sociopaths? They accuse you corrupt to cover their corrupt deed. They claim they have integrity to cover the reality that they don't have integrity. They're a bunch of thieves, robbers, fraudsters, and liars. They never receive any discipline at all. Once a thief, always a thief. I faced or met face to face with them, even over the telephone with some of them who call themselves integrity investigators. They are the fraudsters. They are the thieves. They are liars, and they are radical robbers. Before I say a word, they have attacked you. They have attacked me with words without giving you or me a chance to question them. Like the dogs, they bark as soon as they smell or see you. They do so to cover their unethical and illegal deed. They don't want you to know that they're actually the thieves, real thieves and liars and fraudsters and robbers. The integrity section of Service Canada is just a camouflage of their illegal and unethical deed. The most interesting thing is that they call integrity, but their integrity investigators are from different parts of the country and they all use PO box address. There are those involved in student loan fraud, as in my case, and other theft. All the investigators that I met are people who used my identity and took student loan fraudulently, took internal loan under the student loan program, and forced me to pay it back to them because the government told them to pay back. So they did pay back, but then they forced me to pay them directly. There are also people who took the CERB, although they were not qualified, but then demanded that I should pay them back, which is actually two of them. When the politicians argue about people took the CERB but they were not qualified, they never clarify that those who are not qualified are those working for the CRA and Service Canada. These are the people who were not qualified for the CERB. And the government told them to pay back, but these corrupt people charged the students, their victims, and forced these innocent people to pay the CERB to them directly. In my case, Tammy McGarry and Mira Bulleris asked me to pay back to them, and each wants $1,000. But I called Mira, I said, this is you. You are not qualified to take the CERB, and now you want me to pay back the CERB to you? So she backed out. But Tammy never backed out. Tammy McGarry was the other one. She never backed out. She is very radical and fundamentalist. She is so forceful, very demanding. She has been taking my tax refunds and benefits from tax years 2012 without my knowledge and written consent. She's doing the same with the SERP. She used the customer service to send me monthly collection letter, just the same as the student loan she took. Because she works at Service Canada, she uses her position and authority to withdraw employment insurance without my knowledge. This customer service is like a robot who does things as programmed and automatically. There has never been a two-way communication, but always one-way communication. Their communication. I did not know that Tammy Migeri has been withdrawing employment insurance using my identity for 2 years, ever since she was told to repay the SERP. When I received my notice of assessment, I noticed there's always a deduction. No customer service agent was able to tell me what it was. 2 years later, Tammy sent me T4E. She issued me a T4E employment insurance, which I never took. When I asked about this, I was sent to the customer service, one customer service agent after another. There has never been any solution or right answer. Tammy is in hiding, but she is an integrity investigator. I'm being charged for withdrawing employment insurance, which I never did. At the same time, Tammy collected all my family benefits and my tax refunds. The government should charge her, but every time I address this issue to the government, the politicians, my case always ended up in the customer service. Then it disappeared. The politicians never take charge, although it is their responsibility as leaders. They put themselves as the public administrators. If you are a minister, you are a public administrator. But they never do. They don't know the management system in the government, because if you are a minister of finance, for example, you are responsible for every organization under the jurisdictions of finance, right down to the provincial, municipal, and even village. You are responsible for it. But they don't know how. They don't really know that they have responsibility. When you use PO Box, you are hiding yourself. You are hiding your identity. You don't have integrity. You are dishonest. The funniest thing is that Tammy and Muriel are integrity investigators. As I have mentioned, they both are integrity investigators, but they are fraudsters. The wall has never been upside down than this. The criminals are in charge of investigating a crime. Does it make sense? Service Canada's requirement for a new scene is different from the government requirement. This is another dark side of the privatization of government infrastructure and program. Since the bank official has used my identity and social insurance number to take student loan fraudulently, using forgery and fraudulent documents, and collaborated with the corrupt officials at the federal and provincial government in the student loan division, I asked for a new social insurance number. So when I asked Service Canada for a new social insurance number, and my husband is also attached to me, so he has to have a new social insurance number as well. Mike, Muriel, and Tammy were the integrity investigators, and they formed a commission to make a decision, and they gave me the most ridiculous requirement anyone could ever encounter in his life. The most ridiculous requirements are, other than similar to the government, which is to us to report to the police and apply for a new one. Those are the two requirements in the government gives. But these are the additional requirements that Service Canada people use to discourage you from asking for a new social insurance number. Ask forgiveness from the bank official who engineered the fraud using me or my identity or your identity. Now, where do you get this? Why do I have to ask forgiveness for a person who uses my identity and commit a fraud? Then another one is send a picture to all employers, but do not contact them directly. Former employers. Why do I have to do that? I have nothing to do with the former employers. Why do I have to give them my picture? What for? Make a list of employers that you never worked for. Wow. As I said, the government's requirements are simple. Report to the police and apply for a new one. The requirement from Muriel, Mike, and Tammy, who are members of the commission and the integrity investigators, is more as political manipulation and childish. They want to discourage you to apply for social insurance number, a new social insurance number. But to newcomers, foreigners, they can get social insurance number very quick. As soon as they arrive, they get social insurance number right away. The last requirement is the most ridiculous one. There are millions of employers in Canada that I never worked for. What do they have to do with me asking for a new social insurance number? When I asked again the second time, they asked me to do the same thing, repeat the same process. Do you see how you deal with the customer service agents or customer service? The answer are repetitively programmed, and it's almost like automatic answer. It comes over and over and over until you are tired of it and you quit. The third time is passed to another contractor who then, after I mentioned about the fraudulent and forgery documents, she was very surprised, but she said that she cannot issue a new SIN or new social insurance number because of the investigators. It has to be the decision of the investigators. Now, what can I get? How it is impossible for me to get a new social insurance number if the investigators are the people who use my social insurance number to take student loan fraudulently. Does it make sense? Also, Service Canada makes its own policy never to issue a new social insurance number. If they have to give you a new social insurance number, which you obtain by political means or you force them to give you a new social insurance number, the old social insurance number is still valid. In other words, you will have two social insurance numbers. You will have or you will use the new one, but the old one is attached to all benefits and it is being used by these corrupt officials. It is also attached to offshore accounts. So they use your old social insurance number and your social insurance number for money laundering. I mean, your social insurance number account for money laundering. As a victim of fraud, why should I ask a forgiveness from Chris, the bank official who engineered the fraud of student loan using my identity? Why Muriel is the integrity investigator? Why Tammy is the integrity investigator? Why Mike is the integrity investigator when they are the ones, the corrupt officials from the former Department of Human Resources and Social Development in Canada, who took internal loan under a student loan scheme and has forced me to pay or repay them for the money they have taken. Another officials are Anik Dupon and Atik Rahman. The loan that's supposed to be theirs, but they're forcing me to pay them back. It is just a camouflage. Integrity is just a camouflage. They don't have integrity. Notice that since the government reform, Crown Corporation also starts using PO Box address. special operating agencies disappeared altogether, taken over by the political cronies. Before the reform, they all used the civic address, but now they all disappear because they have been privatized. Principally and by definition, all public offices must use civic address. But since the government reform, many started using PO Box address, meaning they are private. They are no longer public office. Both the CRA Corporation and Service Canada do use PO Box address, never a civic address. They even use phantom positions and phantom authority, meaning positions and authority that do not exist but only on paper. This means that they are no longer the public office. This kind of practice makes robbery and fraud easy, especially among those who work for the government or especially those who work for Service Canada and the CRA. They can wash their track and you never find them, especially when they are inside the circle, customer service circle. This is the job of the police unit to prevent this kind of policy. But are the police, where are they? Where are the police when you need them? They have been turned into customer service and cannot do any proposed or policy change. The policy of having two social insurance number has criminal underline. So has the policy of having social insurance number as an online bank account. They own it. You see, notice that when they tell you to go and pay at the bank, and then you go to the bank and tell the teller to pay money to or transfer the money to your social insurance number. Who owns the social insurance number? It's not you. It's them, these corrupt officials. By the way, the creation of the CRA corporations and Service Canada, as I have mentioned several times, is to take over the public service. Remember Harper said to govern without the government? These two entities are the nation's logistics to create a kingdom of Canada, or Harper's kingdom, so that he can govern without the government. But he used the government public sector political stage and resources to build his own kingdom, his own government. The cost of education should be free to every Canadian, but failing or falling to market pressures to access your tax dollars, government allowed colleges and universities to start charging tuition and allow the students to access the tax dollars to the loan. This student loan scheme not only causes the tuition to keep increasing, but it gives the banking industry to come up with a scheme to access your tax dollars as well. CIBC started lobbying the government to privatize student loan in the early 1990s to access your tax dollars for free. While the lobbying was still in the making, the government has allowed the students to take their loan documents to the bank. Colleges and universities that used to issue loan documents were then issued by the National Student Loan Service Center, a customer service with an address of PO Box. Uh, Provincial and federal governments were transformed into ministries, and the ministries that deals with student loan, Ministry of Training, Colleges and University, also Ministry of Colleges and Universities after the rebranding of the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada, and the provincial government also went through a rebranding in 2015, same year. For your information, CIBC has been involved in financial crimes for decades. In fact, since the early 1980s, some of its branches programmed the computer system in such a way that for every transaction you make with your bank card, they will take a certain amount for themselves, the person who programmed the computer system. For example, when you make a direct purchase using your banking card or make a withdrawal even at CIBC ATM, a certain portion will be deposited to a certain account. That is the account of the official who does the programming. So if you spend $10, your bank record will take $1.50. This amount never shows in your bank record, though, the running balance. Have you ever noticed that when you do bank reconciliation, your account never balance? Your bank transaction gives you a running balance every 10 transactions or sometimes 15 transactions. At the end of the year, your banking reconciliation shows that you have about $500 or $600 off. It is never balanced. Ministry of Training, Colleges and University also went through a reorganization in 2015 and rebranding it. It was split into two. One deals with elementary and secondary school, including training, and the other one is just for colleges and universities. Sadly, some corrupt bank officials used the opportunity of privatization while still in the negotiation in the lobbying. Uh, when the students took their loan documents to the bank, the corrupt bank officials took a copy of the document, have the person they usually order checks to for their clients to forge the documents and submitted them for a loan. So the bank officials used these forgery documents and then proposed for a student loan with the collaboration with the corrupt officials at the federal and provincial levels, those at the student loan division. These are the people who entered the government through the political parties and never gone through the security clearance. Their loyalty, honesty, responsibility, and accountability were never tested. 650,000 students became the victims of these corrupt officials. This victimization has never stopped until today because no leader has the ability to take charge, and the government itself is in severe state of mental and technical incapacity. So the political staff keeps sending you to the customer service, so it is never solved. Politicians are spoon-fed. The policies and laws they propose are from the outsiders who use them to promote their interests, just as the case of the CRA with this amendment and its desires to do your income tax returns. They use these elected officials to legalize their theft, robbery, and fraud. Politicians do not even know about public interest, but always private interest. In this fraudulent student loan case, for example, rather than making these corrupt people taking the responsibility for stealing your tax dollars using the students' identities, they combine the federal and provincial student loan. So the official privatization of student loan began in September 1999, but the forgery and fraud began in the early 1990s, the years ABC started lobbying for privatizing the student loan. Politicians never know how to seek the root of the problems, solving it and stop the disease because they are not the actors who do the analysis. They do not know how to analyze. They never read the entire story, but only one or two paragraphs briefing notes prepared by their staff. They only read a little here and a little there, and they miss out all the important information. They know about this fraud but never stop it or punish the people involved. They follow the outsiders' policy for another reform. They created a middleman called the National Student Loan Service Center, one whose job is to distribute student loan documents and combine the federal and provincial loan into one, the integrated student loan. Isn't that funny? Why you in the private sector they cut all the middlemen to save money, but in the government they create more and more middlemen. You know that each time the government privatizes a department, agency, or a program, it always went bankrupt in less than 5 years. Those that want to survive, they have to depend on your tax dollars, but at the same time they charge you for their service. They are double dipping. For example, the toll road 407. ER 407. The company that owns and manages uh, this toll road went bankrupt and survived by your tax dollars in less than 5 years. But it turns around and charges you per kilometer driven, not the use of the road. It is very unfair. It should be free for you because they use your tax dollars to build it, and now they're after going bankrupt, they're survived by your tax dollars, but then they turn around and charge you. It should be free, but we don't have leaders who know and want to defend you and your right as the public who owns and builds public resources. The combined student loan in 2002 created more scholar rather than solving the problem of fraud while securing the reputation of the people involved in this fraud. The forgery and fraud continue because these corrupt officials follow the student, and from using forgery documents, they created a fraudulent one. They made their own version but put the National Student Loan Service Center as the central of the loan activity. In less than 5 years again, in 2006, the government took over the student loan program because the fraud continued. These leaders never stopped this fraud. But at the same time, the same as the history of privatization, the National Student Loan Service Center was defaulted in 2006 as well. It went bankrupt in less than 5 years. The National Student Loan Service Center was then, after defaulted, is no longer in service, but the police officers do not know this. Therefore, they are not able to help the students who seek their help. The politicians opened their eyes and decided to refer their decision from privatizing the student loan. So the student have to apply for student loan directly to the college or university where they are going to study. And no more paperwork, but all digital. So you should have a student ID before you could apply for a student loan, and you can only apply through the college or university portal where you're going to study. But in the early 2002, the students, many of them, thousands of them, came to realize that their student loan became double or triple. So they defaulted their loans. Again, the government never punished these corrupt officials or took action against these corrupt officials. The government came up with another scholar in the administration of student loan. It created repayment assistance program due to these thousands of students defaulted their loans. Because hundreds of students or thousands of students defaulted their loans, and as their loan has been double or triple, CIBC lobbied the politicians to create the CRA Corporation, a private company to be customer service of the CRA, and it used its power and authority to put pressure on the students to be responsible for their fraudulent loan taken by the corrupt bank officials and the corrupt government officials. By creating this private company as the customer service of the CRA and have the CRA to shed its responsibility in terms of issuing notice of assessment and checks for tax refunds and benefits, they can easily collude with the person in charge to take the students' tax refunds and benefits, which they have started in tax year 2012, as the government took over the student loan repayment program in 2013. Because these corrupt bank officials applied for the repayment assistance programs using, again, the students' identities. Once the government took over the student loan repayment program in 2013, the students must pay the loan back to the government directly. In this case, the ministry or department that manages the program, which is the provincial government. Instead of communicating with the student, the government must announce that it has forfeited or forgiven all the student loan of the students, all the loans of the student up to 2013, while asking the bank officials and corrupt officials to pay back the loan. The government told these corrupt people, these corrupt officials, to pay back the loan, which they did. Then they turned around and used the CRA corporation to chase after the students to pay them back the money that they have paid to the government, which is a different person every month. In my case and my son's case, the money goes to 4 different people, while Chris, the corrupt bank official, and Leslie, um, the corrupt government official at the provincial level, use a collection agency, while Leslie make her own collection agency called Ontario Credit Collection Services. These corrupt officials just take the students' tax refunds and benefits without the students' knowledge and consent or written authorization. It is the same as stealing, and stealing is a crime. No one does anything of this crime or about this crime because they use the name the CRA. People are afraid of the name CRA. Every province in Canada has the Debt Collection and Settlement Act and has the same requirements. You can take the debtor's money if the person has given you a written permission or written authorization, but the CRA gives the students tax refunds and benefits to these corrupt officials without notifying the students, without the students' authorizations, which is a theft. In the Debt Collection and Settlement Act, you are given 2 years, or it has been accepted as a reasonable time that you can only pursue a collection for 2 years. After that, the debt is deemed non-collectible. But by using the name the CRA or having the CRA corporation to take the students' tax refunds and benefits, not only this is as an enforcement for the student to be responsible for the debt or crime of these corrupt officials, but also the CRA corporation is an agent of theft. They steal the students' tax refunds and benefits for these corrupt officials, but they also obtain the portion of the money. Therefore, the students have become their perpetual or forever victims because there is a corruption pipeline. Have you ever studied the corruption system in the government? It is systemic. The person at the bottom makes the collection and send it upward. From the top, the money is distributed downward toward or along the pipeline. The debt that is not yours become yours forever, or a perpetual debt. You are responsible for other people's crime forever because they use the CRA, or it is the CRA corporation. With the CRA giving you tax refunds and benefits without your knowledge and written authorization, it is the same as the government to legalize theft and robbery. This is a crime. This is a white-collar crime, but where are the police? They are not properly trained in white-collar crime. The police cannot even tell the difference between the letter from the CRA and the CRA corporation. Do you know that the CRA corporation told the CRA never to communicate with you either in writing or orally, especially after 2013? Because they don't want you to know that this student loan is a fraud, and so is the audit, and that it is the CRA corporation that has communicated with you. In fact, so they're hiding the real CRA. In fact, beginning 2013, you are no longer allowed to communicate with anyone from the CRA, but always the CRA corporation or the customer service. When you communicate with the CRA, I mean the real CRA, in writing, it is always end up in a drop box, or they tell you to drop it at the mail drop box at the front office. You are not allowed to talk to anyone, but can use a telephone to talk to someone inside the office. They are hiding from you. They don't want you to know that they are working on schemes to rob or fraud you. They don't even want you to know them physically. They don't want to meet with you. They are not allowed. Actually, public servants are not allowed to meet with you. You call this a public office? Why a public office is hiding from you? Any person should go to the public office and meet with anyone or the person in charge. But since 2013, you are emphasized to be served by the customer service agents, people who work using BlackBerry or cellular telephone, and they can be anywhere. I've talked to several of the CRA customer service agents. One was lying on the beach in Jamaica, one is in Mexico, and one is in Costa Rica, another one is in Colombia, and also in Canada. Those in Canada uses the 3 letters extension to their agent number. Like they changed the government, the CRA, like in the prison. So you use agent number 0007. You will never receive any proper answer from people working in this scheme. They are like programmable people and answer you in a programmable manner. I quit using the CRA customer service. Every time they send me to a customer service, I said, stop sending me to the customer service. If you don't know to deal with this case, stop sending me to the customer service. And when the customer service call, I said, I don't deal with customer service. Not only they do not know to answer you, but it also a waste of time because it takes you between 45 minutes and 1 hour before the agent comes on the phone. This is the most ineffective and inefficient system. It is a salvage system. It removes you from your right as a citizen of a sovereign nation of Canada. The most efficient and effective way is that you are served by public servants. But public servants were told not to serve you either. They are made to be removed from you while they were trained and took an oath to serve you. They are paid by your tax dollars. The customer service agents also make a living from your tax dollars, but do nothing for you. They give you mental, emotional, and psychological problems because they don't know how to answer or solve your problems, which they don't know but were told to. Nothing but deceive, manipulate, lie, and deny. Take, for example, the deduction in my notice of assessment. It takes 2 years before I find out that Tammy McGarry uses my identity and withdraws employment insurance. So if I need to withdraw employment insurance, I can't because Tammy is withdrawing it using my name, my social insurance number. This is one of the reasons why Service Canada does not want to give you a new social insurance number. The social insurance number is just a citizen registration number or a permanent residence number that allows you to work in Canada. Foreigners are not allowed to work in Canada. If you lose your social insurance number, you can replace it, or if someone uses your social insurance number, you just get a new one. Since the creation of the CRA Corporation and Service Canada, they use your social insurance number for everything. It is even treated as a credit card once it is turned into an online bank account. This is illegal because it makes it easy for people who can access your social insurance number, or once they have your social insurance number, they can exploit you. They use your social insurance number for money laundering and all kinds of financial crimes, and the one that uses are those who process this social insurance number or people who are from the department that issue the social insurance number. It is inside job. This kind of unethical policy should be counteracted by the police force, but the police force does not even know about these changes and the politics and purpose behind all these politics and creations. With these two entities focus on money, use any schemes of political schemes to make money. Foreigners have been allowed to work in Canada if at government sponsorship, but at your expense. Take a look at the temporary foreign workers program. It is not, or it is from those who call themselves Employment and Social Development Canada, a phantom department, a department that does not exist. These people sell your future to enrich themselves. They exploit you for their financial benefits. Under the policy of global economic equalization, these workers come to Canada under their government sponsorship. They work here and send remittance to their government. They come here and started taking labor jobs. Using their education, they slowly taking over the white collar jobs, leaving you without jobs. So they go to work while working in the labor, but then once they finish their education, they take over your job. They move to the white collar uh, field and leave you with education to work in the blue collar field. Although you have higher education, you will not be hired in your field, even at the government, because your government has an IOU to the government of these people's country. So as they take your job, as they move up the ladder, you are pushed to take on lower level jobs. Your standard of living declining, but their standard of living is increasing. As they send the remittance to their government is making an income from their labor, while your government is struggling with more and more debt and wasting more and more money for things that are, I should call, stupid, because it is about spending to balance the budget. Don't you know that government does not work with a balanced budget but a rolling budget? This balanced budget causes corruption and massive waste. Rolling budget requires proper economic planning, short-term and long-term planning, which is the government has abandoned since the government reform. They use four-legged horse budget apocalypse and categorical funding. This leads to the balanced budget. The end result is that you have bunch of corrupt officials and they prefer hiring foreigners because they can easily be dictated and controlled. They are easy to be bird of a feather to fly together. As I said earlier, the CRA Corporation makes its own fake phantom Department of Justice Canada and federal court. Use their fake court, they send a garnishment letter to the students' employers and demand the money. The students become their perpetual victims even though they have paid, and they become forever victims beginning tax years 2012. This is the same fake court that used to send the fraudulent requirement to pay to the bank managers, their victims, and the people who have business deal with their victims, subcontractors, clients, customers. And this is also uh, the one who sent the note, I mean internal memo to bank managers to remove your cash from your account and transfer it to the two account, such as the one Rivera, whose real name is Michael Scolfer, sent to CABC branch manager in Smith Falls. However, this audit practice is also being copied by the Department of Agriculture Canada and Agri-Food Canada, meaning that now the people are now establishing themselves uh, another phantom entity to come and audit the farmers. So when they audit the farmers, they ask the farmers the names and address of their customers or clients. What does this request have to do with auditing farmers? Because the people are not professionally trained in auditing, they do an audit corruptly and collude with the others to glorify their fraudulent audit practice. Now, they also think that the farmers may use lobbies to get money from the government. So they think that these farmers are making a living from your tax dollars as well. Well, actually, they do. They do have subsidy, but small business operators, most of them don't. Contractors may have subsidy from the government because they also have lobbies, corporate lobbies, but small business operators, such as the contractor or subcontractors, they don't use lobbyists. Most of them don't. The root of this fraud is financial greed. People are greedy for money and use their position and authority to fraud you, thinking that you do not know about the work of the CRA. All you have to do is just read and analyze. This amendment tells you that they want the politicians to legalize theft and fraud. This is what they have been doing since their establishment of the CRA Corporation in 2007. Now they just want to extend their target victims. They will increase their costs, increase money laundering, and with the help of the bank managers, people who authorize the removal of your cash without your knowledge, which is a theft, and send the money to offshore accounts, which is money laundering. As I said, the money will never leave your account, or the money will never leave your country without the bank manager's authorization. Now, in January 2020 as well, which I have mentioned before, Service Canada declared it is an agency, a federal agency, and its phantom entity, Employment and Social Development Canada, become a department, a phantom department, and they claim that this department was established in 2005, but the Employment and Social Development Canada was established, it's just a name, in 2015. This phantom entity is actually the corrupt former government officials who have then moved to Service Canada as contractors. These are also the people who organize the temporary foreign workers, and for this reason, they take over the job of the Department of Immigration Canada to process passport and, of course, soon visa. Yeah, in the foreign countries, they've already issued visa. Then followed by export and import, because all they do is just for the money. As customer service, they want to do everything, especially jobs that produce financial transaction. It is about the money. It is about greed. Although this phantom entity does not exist, they started showing it online under Service Canada as a department, and that it has a minister, one that handles jobs and employment under Carney. It is Patty Haju. How can you allow yourself to be deceived this way? I have an argument with several people about Employment and Social Development Canada. I said it does not exist. They said it does. When I asked where is the address, no one can tell me where it is. Even those who claim they are from Employment and Social Development Canada, even one of the customer service who claims he works at Employment and Social Development Canada and becomes the RCMP training coordinator. How could that be? That means that the RCMP does not use the security clearance anymore. How come a person who works for employment does employers that doesn't exist is able to work at the RCMP, and the worst is the training coordinator? They said we don't have an address. How can you deal with a department that does not exist? Remember, people create a phantom entity for the sole purpose, which is to fraud you. When they call me about the student loan, which is not mine, but Tammy, Muriel, Anik, Atix, Leslie, and Chris, they told me to send the money to the different PO box under the name Employment and Social Development Canada. Even the CRA Corporation says that when you take student loan or employment insurance, you owe money to Employment and Social Development Canada. But your agreement says that you take a loan from the Department of Training, Colleges, and University. This is purely deception and fraud. It's a lie. When you send money to Employment and Social Development Canada, it means the money goes to the different people, not to the Employment and Social Development Canada, which doesn't exist. And no one never signed any agreement with the so-called Employment and Social Development Canada. I remember one of the agents said, well, it is for the people. In other words, he was telling me that this Employment and Social Development Canada are actually different people and they have different PO Box address, or they are the contractors of Service Canada. But in 2020, after the Service Canada declared it is an agency, and they have this Employment and Social Development Canada as a department, a phantom department, they open bank account with the name Employment and Social Development Canada. However, when they send an invoice to you and want you to pay at the bank with that remittance voucher, they want the money to be deposited to social insurance number account. So there is this remittance vouchers tells you where the money to be transferred later. These people love for the money is beyond what you imagine. It is about material. Or once a thief, always a thief. They use their position, authority, and the government agency's name and even a phantom department to force submission and obedience. After declaring itself as an agency, they started by taking over things that produce money. You see, like the immigration, passport, visa, they are just the customer service, while the immigration still does the work. It is a duplication, but no one thinks that far because it is about making money. This makes it easy for the customer service agents or Service Canada contractors to sell passport and visa to foreigners. After all, they are in charge of temporary foreign workers. It is all about the money. This amendment means to legalize fraud, and since they are the customer service, any agent will use the opportunity to rob you, claiming he or she is the CRA, just as they have done all these years. They will increase their wealth at your expense, and you will become their perpetual victims. Since your agency number and social insurance number are online accounts, and they are attached to offshore accounts, it increases the activities of money laundering. Like, I know that my husband, my son, and myself, our social insurance number are online accounts, and they're attached to each two offshore accounts. I also know which bank they are, like CIBC, TD Banks, and Scotia Banks. So in the end, you will see that politicians endorse greater fraud and money laundering. They endorse white collar crimes. Can they endorse something that is good to the society, make the society better off instead of crime? Let me emphasize again, Employment and Social Development Canada is a phantom entity or a phantom department, and it does not exist. It exists in name only or online, and people create a phantom entity for the sole purpose, which is to fraud you. And this is what they have been doing since it was established by the corrupt government officials who work as contractors of Service Canada.